At a high-security military checkpoint, guards rummaged through a woman's bag, dismissing her as ordinary, until a colonel's sharp command stopped them cold, revealing her hidden importance in an instant. Sarah Mitchell stood at the entrance to Fort Bradley, a sprawling military base in a quiet corner of North Carolina. She was 34, with a reserved demeanor that didn't draw attention. Her plain black backpack hung loosely from one shoulder, and her attire, jeans, a dark sweater, and practical boots, suggested nothing out of the ordinary. She'd approached the gate with the calm of someone who'd been through checkpoints before, her ID ready, her expression neutral. The guards, two young soldiers in their early 20s, barely glanced at her as they waved her forward for a routine inspection. The checkpoint was busy that morning, with contractors, civilian staff, and military personnel filtering through. Sarah handed her ID to the first guard, Private Daniels, who scanned it with a handheld device. The machine beeped, confirming her clearance, but Daniels motioned to her bag. "Need to check that, ma'am," he said, his tone professional but clipped. Sarah nodded, placing the backpack on the table without hesitation. The second guard, Private Lopez, began unzipping pockets, pulling out a laptop, a water bottle, and a few folders. He rifled through them, his movements quick but thorough, while Daniels watched, occasionally glancing at Sarah. Lopez paused, holding up a small, sealed metal case, no bigger than a paperback book. It was unmarked, with a digital lock that required a code. He raised an eyebrow, looking at Sarah. "What's this?" he asked, his tone carrying a hint of suspicion. Sarah met his gaze, her voice steady. "It's work-related. Sensitive materials. My clearance covers it." Lopez exchanged a look with Daniels, who shrugged slightly, as if to say, "She's just another contractor." "We'll need to open it," Lopez said, his fingers hovering over the lock. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her voice took on a slight edge. "It's classified. You don't have the clearance to inspect it." The words hung in the air, and Daniels let out a short laugh, more dismissive than amused. "Ma'am, we check everything that comes through this gate. No exceptions." He reached for the case, but Sarah stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on the table. "Call your supervisor," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. The guards hesitated, clearly unused to pushback from someone who looked so unassuming. Lopez set the case down, his jaw tightening. "Look, we've got a job to do. If you're carrying something you can't explain, we're not letting it through." Sarah didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She simply repeated, "Call your supervisor." Her eyes held theirs, steady and unwavering, and for the first time, the guards seemed to sense something was off. Daniels grabbed his radio, muttering into it, while Lopez kept his hand near the case, as if guarding it. Within minutes, a lieutenant arrived, a woman in her 30s named Carter, her uniform crisp, her expression all business. She glanced at Sarah, then at the case on the table. "What's the issue here?" she asked, addressing the guards. Daniels explained quickly, pointing to the case. "She says it's classified, won't let us open it. ID checks out, but we can't let it through without inspection." Carter turned to Sarah, her tone professional but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to open the case or provide documentation for its contents." Sarah reached into her backpack, pulling out a folded letter with an official seal. She handed it to Carter without a word. The lieutenant unfolded it, her eyes scanning the text. Her brow furrowed, and she looked up at Sarah, then back at the letter. "This is from Colonel Hayes," she said, her voice quieter now. "It's authentic." She handed the letter back, her demeanor shifting slightly. "I'll need to escalate this. Wait here." The guards exchanged glances, their earlier confidence fading. Lopez shifted uncomfortably, while Daniels kept his eyes on Sarah, as if trying to figure out who she was. She stood quietly, her hands clasped in front of her, her face giving nothing away. The other personnel passing through the checkpoint cast curious glances, sensing the tension but unaware of its cause. Minutes ticked by, the morning air cool but heavy with anticipation. Then Colonel Hayes himself appeared, striding toward the checkpoint with purpose. He was in his late 50s, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of decades in the military. His presence commanded attention, and the guard snapped to attention, saluting as he approached. He returned the salute curtly, his eyes locking onto Sarah. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying an authority that silenced the checkpoint. "Let her through. Now." Daniels and Lopez froze, their hands still on the table. Carter, standing beside them, nodded quickly, stepping back. "Yes, sir," she said, motioning for the guards to move. Lopez hesitated, his hand still near the metal case. "Sir, we didn't inspect," he started, but Hayes cut him off with a sharp look. "I said now, Private. Pack her bag and clear her." His tone left no room for argument. Lopez scrambled to repack Sarah's backpack, placing the metal case carefully inside. Daniels handed her ID back, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by a nervous glance. Sarah took the bag, slinging it over her shoulder, and nodded to Hayes. "Thank you, Colonel," she said, her voice as calm as ever. She stepped through the checkpoint, her steps measured, and disappeared into the base without looking back. The guards stood in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Carter and Hayes. The lieutenant cleared her throat, addressing them quietly. "You did your job, but next time, verify clearance levels before you escalate." "Understood?" Both nodded, still processing what had just happened. Hayes didn't linger. He turned and walked back toward the command building, his expression unreadable. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just another contractor. She was a civilian analyst with a clearance level higher than most officers on the base. Her work, though rarely discussed, involved handling intelligence critical to national security, data that could shift the course of operations halfway across the globe. The metal case in her bag contained encrypted drives with information so sensitive that only a handful of people in the country were authorized to access it. The letter from Colonel Hayes, her direct contact, was a rare override, a directive that ensured her passage without interference. Sarah had started her career as a data analyst for a private firm, her knack for patterns and languages catching the attention of a government recruiter. She'd been brought into the fold of a little-known agency, one that operated in the shadows of larger intelligence organizations. Her job was to analyze threats, cyber, logistical, strategic, and deliver insights that shaped decisions at the highest levels. She didn't carry a gun or wear a uniform, but her work saved lives, often in ways no one would ever know. The checkpoint incident wasn't the first time her unassuming appearance had led to underestimation. She'd faced skeptical guards, dismissive officials, even colleagues who assumed she was just a desk worker. But Sarah never corrected them, never flaunted her role. She let her clearance speak for her, and when it did, like today, it spoke volumes. The metal case, the letter, the emblem on her ID that only activated under specific scans, they were markers of a world most people never saw. Back at the checkpoint, Daniels and Lopez resumed their duties, but the encounter stayed with them. "Who was she?" Lopez asked Carter later during a break. The lieutenant shook her head. "Someone you don't question twice," she said simply. "Her clearance outranks half the brass here. That case? Probably worth more than this entire base." Daniels let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "And we thought she was just some contractor." Word of the incident spread quietly across Fort Bradley. By the next day, it was the talk of the mess hall, a story passed between soldiers and staff with a mix of awe and curiosity. Sarah's name wasn't mentioned. Most didn't know it, but the tale of the woman with the mysterious case and the colonel's command became a kind of legend. It was a reminder that not everyone who walked through the gates was what they seemed, that power didn't always come with a uniform or a title. Sarah, meanwhile, was already deep into her work. In a secure office within the base, she unlocked the metal case, her fingers entering the code with practiced ease. The drives inside connected to a system few could access, and she spent hours analyzing data, patterns of communication, financial transactions, satellite imagery. Her findings would be briefed to Colonel Hayes and a select group of officials later that week, shaping decisions that would ripple far beyond the base. She didn't think about the checkpoint, the guards, or the moment Hayes had stepped in. It was just another day, another gate, another moment where her quiet authority had shifted the room. But for those who'd witnessed it, the memory lingered. Daniels and Lopez would tell the story for years, how they'd searched a woman's bag, questioned her clearance, and then watched as a colonel's command revealed her true weight. It was a lesson in assumptions, in the hidden power of those who moved through the world unnoticed. Sarah's work continued, her presence on the base a quiet force. She'd leave Fort Bradley in a few days, her bag slung over her shoulder, her ID tucked away, ready for the next checkpoint, the next mission. The guards would remember her, though, and so would the base. Her story, like the data she carried, was a quiet power, one that changed everything without ever raising its voice.